Excellent, Rob. Very happy you're doing this work. So my name is David Stern, and I am the Executive Director of Equal Justice Works, and it is my great pleasure to be presenting tonight's Mississippi Center for Justice Award to Karen Lash. Yeah, I have known Karen since I joined Equal Justice Works 25 years ago. She was the Associate Dean at USC Law School, and she was the champion and Pied Piper for everything public interest. Karen was such an effective leader and such an inspiration to many of us that we got her on our board of directors, and then I hired her as our Vice President of Programs at Equal Justice Works. So flash forward to 2005, Katrina struck the Gulf. Remember those images of the Superdome? I hardly need to remind you. The thousands of homes destroyed and lives disrupted. I remember so vividly in our offices just the feeling of outrage and upset by the injustices that we saw on television, and quite literally when we reached out to our allies and friends in the Gulf, many of those individuals at legal aid organizations were not there because they too, their lives were disrupted by the storms. So Karen had started volunteering for MCJ, and we asked her to go down and survey the situation, since we couldn't get in touch with our friends, and to tell us where lawyers and law students could make a difference. Well, we got her harrowing report. We raised $2 million, and we sent 19 lawyers to the Gulf within 2 months. One thing that really stood out from Karen's first report was that there was this incredible lawyer who she met, whose offices were destroyed as a result of the hurricane. And she said, we absolutely needed to have this guy as one of our first fellows that we funded. He was a civil rights lawyer. He was an organizer. He was somebody who could hit the ground running. And sure enough, the very first fellow that we funded was Riley Morse, now the Executive Director, President and CEO of Mississippi Center for Justice. So of course that was good judgment on Karen's part. So after Karen saw the problems in the region, she worked with MCJ to coordinate a massive pro bono program. She enlisted dozens of law firms, scores of law schools, sent thousands of law students and lawyers down to the Gulf in order to be able to help deal with all those pressing injustices. So that was just in and of itself a really remarkable chapter in Karen's life, and she made one hell of a difference. So let me pivot now from Mississippi to Karen's most recent job in the Department of Justice's Office of Access to Justice. So Larry Tribe, you may remember, was the first director of the office, and he said to me and many others, I'm sure if some of you will remember this, we have no money, we have no authority, we have a tiny staff, you know, the most we got is our bully pulpit. Well, one of the best things that Larry Tribe did was to hire Karen Lash. Karen was not interested in being a government bureaucrat or simply to shine the light on the injustices in this country. She saw that most of the government, federal government, was ignorant or not aware about the role of legal aid, even though it is such an important asset in terms of achieving agencies' objectives. So Karen came up with an idea, the Legal Aid Interagency Roundtable, also known as LAIR. LAIR would bring together executives from the different agencies, and they would make commitments about integrating legal aid into their agency's work. That idea became a reality thanks to many of you in this room, and most particularly thanks to our other honoree, Tony West. LAIR is not some bully pulpit or bureaucratic commission. This group gets things done. And you don't have to take my word for it. If you go and read the report that was recently issued by that office, you will be so impressed and amazed by all of the things that they accomplished. Finally, one last accomplishment that I want to highlight. While Karen was at the Department of Justice, she collaborated with Tony West on the bank settlement that resulted in $400 million of support for legal aid. That's worth an applause. So what's next for Karen Lash? Happily, she's continuing to do this work. She's replicating what she did successfully in the Department of Justice at the American University's Justice Programs Office and trying to replicate that model in states around the country. So you can see why Karen Lash is so deserving of tonight's award. But that's not all. Karen is one of the nicest people I know. She is just such an inspiration to me. I love her family, Martha, Oscar. So happy that you're here to be able to celebrate tonight. And of course, the night would not be complete if I didn't do a quick shout out to their dog, Lucky, who's my dog's best friend. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure tonight to give this award to Karen Lash. Come on up here. Turn around, you have to have a picture taken, not with my number too. Good, yeah, we need Riley.
So that was humbling. Thank you, David. And thank you, my beloved MCJ, for this honor. And the chance to do, as the legendary Fannie Lou Hamer told us, never forget where we come from and always praise the bridges that carried us over. The bridges I'd like to praise are MCJ, DOJ, and friends and family. First, MCJ. Mississippi saved me. Who knew that a Jewish lesbian lawyer from Los Angeles would ever say that? But a dozen years ago, Katrina created a crisis at a time of personal crisis for me. My mother had just died, I was newly single, and shuttling between DC and LA to care for my father. When I called Martha Bergmark about doing a DC fundraiser, and she asked me to go to Jackson instead, I agreed to 5 days. But like so many, I got caught in that Mississippi mud. I'd never been to the Deep South. I'd not seen the disaster before the disaster, the poorest state in the country. And then my father died. So I was a grieving mess. And there was this moral imperative like I'd never seen in front of me. Helping felt like the best way to honor my parents' memory and their lifelong commitment to social justice. So the people who became my Mississippi family, including Riley and Christina at the Heart Center, they took me into their homes as we worked to literally and figuratively rebuild. Over that work and grits, some of that grief subsided with their amazing and healing generosity. Because Katrina blew in a nightmare. Everything and everyone cried out for legal help. FEMA's dysfunction, Mississippi's misplaced priorities, ugly predatory behavior, and the list goes on. One of the biggest challenges was over an unfinished housing recovery made worse when Mississippi decided to divert $500 million of its federal dollars for a massive expansion of a state port. Fortunately, the hurricane also blew in the very best. The amazing Martha Bergmark was gifted in harnessing it as she, Monica, Bonnie, and the board opened a coast office and hired the incomparable John Jopling and Riley, as you heard, thanks to Equal Justice Works. Alongside the Mississippi Bar, for the first time since Freedom Summer 1964, legions of lawyers and students converged on Mississippi to do FEMA benefits appeals, eviction and foreclosure defense, insurance disputes, whatever was needed. So thank you all to those who showed up and who showed up again tonight. Here also in spirit is George Riley, who became the most extraordinary volunteer, the gift of an introduction to me from my brother David O'Melveny's pro bono counsel. So Rob, you may claim Martha, I claim George. But the racial dividing line between those who got federal rebuilding funds and those who didn't persisted until 5 years after the storm, when we invited Obama's appointee as HUD Assistant Secretary Mercedes Marquez down to Gulfport, and she aimed to fix that. $200 million later, 5,000 households, mostly African American, were back in livable condition. That is the power of MCJ, Riley's refusal to give up, our volunteers, the feds, and Gerald Blessey, Governor Barber's housing director, who's here tonight and now on MCJ's board. Those efforts changed thousands of Mississippians' lives and helped heal up mine, too. So that process also made me realize the power of federal lawyering, leading to my second bridge. I got to join the dedicated troop of President Obama's appointees and work in DOJ's Office for Access to Justice. Like Mississippi, we had to do a lot with a little. When Attorney General Eric Holder directed our little policy shop to go do justice, he didn't give us the usual federal tools that motivate people like grant-making authority or enforcement authority. But together with the most creative, committed colleagues like Lisa Foster, Bob Bullock, Ali Yang Green, Andrew Stanner, Bill Killebrew, Ben Hernandez-Stan, and Maha Jawed, we discovered lots of useful tools hidden in the corners of federal policy and procedures. One biggie was convening authority, which we used to create LAIR. LAIR's bottom line: federal programs do a better job for low-income and other underserved people when they include legal aid. For example, more people with criminal records get jobs, more seniors are protected from abuse, more immigrant children find refuge from violence. You get the pattern. So 22 agencies, and 5 years later, LAIR unlocked hundreds of millions of dollars and all kinds of other resources so legal aid could help make government programs more effective, more efficient, and fair. Now, a few co-conspirators are here tonight. The list got longer during the reception. So in one breath, I want to thank Kate Peterson, Stacey Grigsby, Julie McAvoy, Sam Hirsch, Tova Calderon, Cindy Chang, Pippa Scarlett, native Mississippian Shirlethia Franklin, and John Gould, who's also a new colleague at my new professional home at AU's Justice Programs Office. But yes, but nothing would have happened without the leadership of ATJ's early bosses, Associate AGs Tom Pirelli and my co-honoree tonight, Tony West. To you both, and to all my DOJ colleagues, I thank you on behalf of the thousands of people who will never know your names, but whose lives are better because of your efforts. So P.S. to Tony. Sharing this honor with you gives me a huge upgrade. Everything DOJ related celebrated tonight is thanks to your courage and genius. You co-chaired LAIR, and you got more legal aid to people who suffered from the financial crisis via the largest settlement in DOJ history. Now, I knew you'd accomplish great things when we first met around 1990, when I was a law firm associate recruiting you to Tuttle & Taylor for the summer. But I didn't dream I'd get to thank you publicly for your work to establish marriage equality, which deeply affected my wife, our son, and me. And since I'm talking marriage equality, a shout out to Don Varelli, who nailed the oral arguments. Which leads me finally, to bridge number 3. I've been blessed with extraordinarily supportive family and friends. David Stern, you have always inspired me to dream bigger than makes sense and then go do it. You also taught me it's okay to cry at the podium. Audrey Ermis, who kept me in law school with a scholarship because she believed in my dreams of a social justice career. Heartfelt appreciation for my big brother David, a beacon of justice himself and his family, as well as our parents, Ed and Gloria Lash, who baked into our very core a commitment to join with others to try to heal the world. I walked in their shoes post-Katrina and through the halls of DOJ. Then there's my new family. I married into a big and loyal one with 11 of those many Ertmans and in-laws here tonight. Yeah, they're noisy too. And Oscar, when we met, you were just 2.5 years old and I fell in love. It is an unparalleled joy to be your other mom. Nothing makes me prouder than to see you grow up and your fiercely held beliefs about justice and fairness take root. At last, my wife, Martha. When we were first dating and I told you about MCJ and the goal of making Mississippi the social justice state, you questioned my grasp on reality. But you quickly gave up on cynicism and became my biggest champion. Being married to you and a parent with you, and the outstanding man you chose for dad, Victor, and now his husband, Jeff, see what you guys did, has brought me more happiness than I dared to imagine. And one final last thank you, I know it's endless, you're patient, is for all that you all are doing and will do for MCJ, especially at this moment when the rule of law itself is under fire in the United States. It's been the honor of a lifetime to work with so many of the very best, and to say so here with so many of my heroes and bridges in the room. Thank you.